Hi, Alexander again.
Hi.
And now we will talk about your piece, Don't Leave the Room.
Sure, let's talk.
Can you just give a little bit context? Who commissioned?
This piece was commissioned by Aksonov Family Foundation for the project Russian Music 2.0, which was a very important, initiative from private fund of Aksonov to support Russian composers to create a commissioning program. And they made a selection with an international jury of 8 Russian composers to commission a piece. And they decided to make it annual. So this year they commissioned another 8 composers. It was a very good, very well organized commission in a sense that they didn't tell you that you need to compose exactly for this lineup and you need to compose exactly with electronics or without electronics or without video. They said that what do we want to do? We will try to make it work. And they just said that generally they prefer a chamber group up to 8-10 musicians, but electronics is possible, some instrumental theater is possible, or some video or some collaboration with other artists is possible as well. So they just try to be as flexible as possible. And then I decided that it's exactly the time to work on the idea I had actually for at least a year, maybe, or maybe more, to create this piece, Don't Leave the Room.
And what is the lineup, right? What kind of musicians, or who is the ensemble, or?
Yes, it was Moscow Contemporary Music Ensemble, and I used flute, clarinet, violin, cello, percussion, trombone, and piano. But I also used a performer and live video. I didn't really use electronics, but I used sampled piano, which, well, is sort of electronics. So, yeah, and but I also used several different other objects for musicians, like flutists and clarinetists play on a big metallic rail with also metallic objects and with a bow. Also, percussionists play on a long string from a steel wire, and also violinist has to play on both violin and classical guitar. So yeah, actually there are a lot of objects inside.
Got it. Got it. And how long is the piece?
I think about 12 minutes.
And I saw that there's a performer, right?
Yes. Performer is actually a central element in this piece because I had an idea of creating a piece for performer with sign language. I'm generally interested in a combination of gestures and music, but then I thought that actually there is a very rich sign language which already exists, and also it has a lot of semantic power in it, and I thought that it would be really interesting to work with that, because in a way it's a sort of vocal music, but without vocalization, because every gesture has semantic meaning, and then I spent several weeks only thinking which text should I use. So it wasn't Brodsky from from the very start. I didn't know what to use, and then I found this poem, which actually became very popular last year during the pandemic's time, because the first line, "Don't leave the room," was something which everyone on the planet had to do last year and partly this year, and but at the same time, it's not a COVID piece, because actually there are a lot of important things in this poem which are more important than just this superficial aspect of not leaving the room during the pandemics. Because obviously Brodsky wrote this poem in last century, a long time ago. When I chose this text, when I just read it again, I realized that there are so many things which are connected already much with my ideas, that I immediately decided to use this poem after several weeks of searching. And because Brodsky, probably you know, was a Soviet dissident, was a Russian poet who was imprisoned because of just of the way he thinks, actually, just because of his beliefs, and and he was just as many other Russian artists of 60s, 70s, 80s, was a victim of this Soviet regime. And this poem reflects it very much, actually. But the thing is that it's very actual for modern Russia nowadays, where I live.
Yes.
Because one of the main ideas there is about censorship, and actually self-censorship, which is maybe even more important. Right. Because here I feel like in Soviet Union, people gradually stop to talk freely about what they think, especially in the social media, and because well, police works in such a way that they fine a lot of people for just some posts which seem to be bad for them. I don't know, and or some people are even imprisoned for several years just for tweet for sharing some post of other people. It's true that it's like probably hundreds of people who are in prison because of that, and maybe even more. And we know only about cases which happen with, let's say, media persons, but we don't know about smaller cases with usual people. And that's why this censorship which is one of the important ideas in this poem, was important for me as one of the ideas of the piece.
So it's kind of critic of let's say, Russian regime, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, just if I would use this poem, it's already a critique of Russian regime, because the poem itself is a critique. It's also not about only about censorship, but also about not leaving the room. And when I composed it, it was exactly the moment when a lot of people went to demonstrations, and when Alexei Navalny was poisoned, and so that was the context of composing the piece. It also was the time of protests in Belarus, and so it was something which was everywhere around me when I composed this. But also there are some other important ideas, like the idea of loneliness, which is also very actual, not only because of pandemics, but just about the general way we live. Because I feel that a lot of people now prefer not to meet with their friends, but just use Zoom or text messaging. Like you asked, how are you? And then you don't really feel that you need to meet because you're already kind of in touch, last news. But this is, so I think that loneliness also becomes stronger in our life than it was before, despite all the social media connections we have in Facebook, Instagram, or wherever. But also I wanted to use to sort of voice to show the voice of minorities in some way using this sign language. And because I also feel that it's a big problem in Russia, because people, I don't know actually how to say it in English, probably people with special needs,
Yes.
right? Yeah. There are a lot of small communities, this sort of minorities of people with special needs, and the general life in Russia is built in such a way like these minorities don't exist. I mean, in Moscow it's a bit better generally, but even in Moscow you wouldn't be able to go to the center of the city in a wheelchair, and but actually it's a big problem. No one thinks about. So it was important for me also to use this language as a voice of different kinds of minorities.
Yes, and that's why it was right. That's why it was this way of this language used, right? This performer used, right?
Yes, yes. Well,
actually,
this,
I understand, right? This language is when the people cannot speak, but they can visually send some messages, right?
Yeah, but so yes, it's the only way of communication, and but at the same time, I also thought that it's important that actually again this combination of Brodsky and sign language is a perfect example of the censorship itself, because we see someone who wants to give us the message, but we don't hear it, we don't understand it. So that's why I thought that like combination of these two already brings a lot of layers to think about, and that's why it was ideal for me.
And what kind of, let's say, sensorial, right, or multisensorial experience you want to create for listener?
Well, in this piece, there are several different kinds of relationship between the music material and the gestures of performer. Also, it's important to say that there is a live video. So the performer is sort of visually amplified because there is a big screen and we see all his gestures on the big screen live. But also there is a short delay because, well, the video signal goes through the video card and through all these things and goes to the video, and then there is a sort of tension between what we see in part of real performer and what we see in a video. And so this is also one of the things I thought about. But then also there is live video, and and it also sort of reflects my work with the text. For me, it was very much like a work with the vocalist. Because like in a vocal piece, you quite often start from the text, what meaning it has and how can you work musically with it. And here as well, one of the main things for the general dramaturgy of the piece was the text and its meaning. So I created different situations in different parts of the piece, depending on what is the meaning of the text. But aside from the sign language, I decided to use other special languages we usually don't use in our life. I also used in the video Braille alphabet, and also I used sign language of special forces, of Russian special forces. It's, by the way, that it's important to say that sign language, if someone doesn't know, I didn't know before, is not international. I mean, it seems to that it should be international because there is no really reason to make it different in different languages. But actually, it's different. So it's a Russian sign language, and I used sign language of Russian special forces, and also I used Braille alphabet and flag semaphore alphabet. So there are several sign languages and other alphabets used in this piece and different parts.
And what software or hardware you use?
Well, actually, I didn't use anything specific. I just used sampled MIDI keyboard, which I used Logic Pro for it, but it could be Max or Reaper or whatever else. It can be anything. It's a simple thing. But also we used, it was a collaboration with video artist Jan Kalmberzin, who used Touch Designer for live video. But also we had some pre-recorded videos, so we also used Adobe Premiere. So yeah, several software for video and for audio.
And what was the process of composing? Okay, how long it took and how you started and what was the stages you go through?
Well, it took months. I don't know exactly. As I said, the idea appeared at least a year before, even when I didn't know about the commission. I just was looking for an opportunity to implement this idea and it was a perfect opportunity. And then I think about maybe five months to compose. Well, non-musical aspect was more important and fast.
Yes.
Yes, because I wanted to implement this social ideas, which were already in a text by Joseph Brodsky. But it was a very special experience of working with the text because, you know, in order to translate the poem into sign language, you need to completely change its syntax, because syntax of sign language, even in Russian, kind of the same language. So Russian language and speech language and Russian sign language, they have completely different syntax. So I worked with the teacher who teaches sign language, and she translated poem of Brodsky. It's hard to explain in English, but it's the title of Brodsky is "Don't Leave the Room," but in translation, it would sound something like room, don't leave, and each line is completely changed. The order of the words is different, and then I also used it in this version in a video. So there is subtitles. There are subtitles, but you can't really recognize these things as Brodsky. I mean, you know it's Brodsky, but it doesn't sound like a poem anymore. Yeah, so it's also important that then you start to think that these people using sign language, they also use Russian, but they think in completely different way because the syntax is different. So it's just something which was a weird discovery for me when I worked on the piece. So there were a lot of discoveries when I started to work on this in very different aspects of working. But then I also, well, I was sort of the first performer because I had to learn all these things, how they look like, and how I can work with it, how I can work with gestures. Because obviously the language exists, but so I cannot really change the gesture, but I can change the timing. Like I can work with how fast he does it, or with the space. I mean, it can be bigger. Some gestures might be like very short, but can be wide as well. So I decided to work on these things. And it gave me a lot of also musical ideas, how I can work on the combination of these gestures with music.
For example?
For example, at one part of the piece, I decided to slow down the text very much. And then I had to find some playing techniques which would really work with it together, like which would create like this unified visual and audio texture when the gesture is really combined with music. So then I had some ideas about special techniques. So it comes from my visual representation of the text, but then it goes into musical part, and I used some special objects to play on strings. Yeah, that's just one of the things, but there were some others as well, like I don't know, like flag semaphore alphabet also gave me immediately the idea how I can work with ensemble with these things. Yeah, so all these languages, they really were the starting point which affected the musical material of the piece.
Can you imagine the piece without performer?
No, not at all. It's like performing romance of Schubert without voice. So, it's completely similar.
Yes. So this means, right, that this piece cannot be played in radio.
Well, recently
it can be radio piece, right?
Well, recently we recorded it on CD. But well, it was okay for me because I needed a good recording anyway. Yeah, so I think that well, it's not. It can exist, but it loses like 90% of the meanings. So I think that yeah, it's. I mean, it would still work.
Yes.
But it would not work,
right?
Yeah, I mean, there is a musical dramaturgy which would work itself. There is a system, and yeah, but at the same time, you will miss all the semantic power of what I compose. So maybe you would even like it, but it's not what I meant to show.
Yes,
to present.
And can you imagine the same piece, but with performer, but without video?
No, it's impossible. It's actually, you're asking me the questions about the essence of multimedia composition as I perceive it. I think that generally the phenomenon of multimedia composition should work in such a way that you just cannot remove any media from it. You cannot remove text, you cannot remove video, you cannot remove, what you use, slide or laser or whatever. And it should be as much connected with everything else that it's impossible to exclude. But also, I think that it's important that at some point, one of these elements should be the most important one in the piece. Like, there should be a moment when the video is more important than anything else, or the performer is more important than anything else, or I don't know. So I think that it's something which really creates the unity of all these elements. So you would not start to think, okay, the piece is good, but I think that video didn't bring any additional elements. I mean, I listened with closed eyes. So I want to create such a composition where you just cannot think in such a way.
Got it. Can you just now tell about the basic compositional principles which you use?
Yes. Well, actually, I worked on a text, and with one exception, I went line by line. But there are several different kinds of relationship between the performer and performer and the text and the musical part. At first, the performer is sort of separated from the musical material, and then he gradually goes into this material, and at some point it becomes some unified organism. Mm-hmm. And then I also decided to work with semantic power of the words, and I decided to use different words from this poem in the middle part, which exactly reflect this feeling on the loneliness in a poem. So there are a lot of these signs which show this loneliness, they create this atmosphere, and I decided to use it especially in the middle part. And then at some point I decided to move to start to work with video part separately. So as I told, to give it a bigger role at some point. So the visual becomes more important than anything else then.
Yes.
At that part. And then so it's always like a flow where the let's say the major layer of perception goes from one media to the other. At some point it's performed, at some point it's just music, at some point it's a video, or at some point it's a video with performer against the music, or vice versa. So that was one of the principles to go through this text and to change to rethink the role of some media element in general in the piece.
Mm-hmm. And how work with performers change your idea of the work? Was there some interactions, or are they saying that you need to change that or that, or?
Well, actually,
or you just written and give it?
It's exactly like that. Because as I said, I was the first performer. I mean, I tried everything myself. I learned the poem in the sign language, and I could perform everything myself. And for some excerpts, I even recorded the instruments myself to try to see how it works together with gesture. So I just try to video myself, record the music, and make an excerpt of like 10 seconds to see on the video how it works. After that, I didn't really need to change anything. But at the same time, I think just working with translator changed a lot of things. It didn't change it directly, but just it changed my feeling of generally of the piece, because then I started to realize that they using sign language, they actually pronounce some things, but they pronounce it in a completely different way. So she recorded me the videos. Because she was actually in another country, she recorded me the videos of herself performing it with pronouncing the text, and then with pronouncing, not pronouncing, but just it is sort of whispering the text, how people with special needs would reproduce it actually, and that's completely different. And then when you see all these things, then you just start to think differently about this whole experience. Yeah, as I said, it's not something direct. It's just like your intuitive feeling, which is different after that. Just experiencing it, you're already another person.
And performer, it was a professional musician, or it was professional in that language?
It was a professional musician. It was actually a very important moment to decide should it be someone who uses this language generally, or should it be a musician? But then I thought that the connection with music will be quite important to understand how my changes of the gesture work in the score.
Yes.
Yeah, so to be very precise with rhythm, to hear how it works with music, and to to work with it sort of musically.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be important. So yeah, I thought until the last moment, should I invite a musician or not, but then I decided to that it should be a musician, at least for the first performance. So I mean, I don't think it's not possible to perform with someone who have problems with hearing. I think it's possible, but just I needed to for the first performance to make a recording to see how it works to do it with a musician. Right. But maybe we will experience something different later.
Yes, good. And maybe you could say some free learnings, right, to others working on these multimedia pieces. What was the biggest learning, right?
Learning?
Yes.
Exactly in the multimedia field, or just about the piece?
More about multimedia, of course, but if you can...
well, I don't know, actually. You almost everything about how it would work generally in Touch Designer, because it's yeah, for I didn't use some very special software, as I said. So it was Touch Designer and Premiere, and I already knew how it works. The new thing was just a combination of these things and how it looks like. So live video together with performer, what kind of energy brings. So I knew that there would be some delay, for instance, between the real performer and his video representation, but it was a bit longer than I thought. Yeah, maybe that's learning, but it's yeah, there was it was a bit problematic that I needed to, for the performer, to create video score, but I needed also to shift it about 1/16 earlier than the whole ensemble to make the video synchronized with ensemble.
Yes.
So the performer actually is not synchronized. He's 1/16 earlier. And that's a very difficult task for performer, actually. But he was brilliant at that. So yeah, that's something I learned. But just I think it's always different. I mean, on another equipment, it can be less, it can be more. So you just need to shift this. So I was aware that there will be some tension, between gestures of performer and the videos. So it will be not simultaneous, but the real gap I didn't know. Yeah, but also it was a bit new experience that we worked together with the live video, but we also had some pre-recorded things, and it had to be combined on the same screen to make an illusion that it's all live. So yeah, there were some things which were new, and yeah, we had to find an opportunity to set it up to make it work. Well, generally, I think it worked. At least worked the part I wanted to see. But yeah, I found more enriching not the technological part, but just the working with the combination of text, gesture, music, and video, and like all these layers, and a bit of electronics. It's really like more directing experience than a composing experience, because
like a directing movie, right? Or directing theatrical pieces.
Yeah, because I can't call it piece, but at the same time it's sort of performance, much more, where I need to plan a lot of layers and to make it work as a multimedia composition and not just as a piece of music with optional video. Yes. So yeah, that was something new, not just the technological thing, but just the way I start to think about music after such an experience.
Yes, yes, but it's look like, right, that when somebody conduct multimedia pieces, it's more like not musical composition, but it's more like theater settings. And when you become less composer, but more like director, right?
I'm not sure I can exactly call myself director even in this case, because I think that when we need to separate multimedia musical composition from video art, it's important. It's very hard sometimes, but I think it's important to understand what was the initial approach. So if a composer does the things, then it's still different when from video art. Yeah. So it's the same thing here. I think that the director would totally make music working for the visual part, while as I said, I tried to make a flow between different media. So at some point, music is definitely the most important thing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this is something which is harder to create for director, but at the same time, to direct some special visual representation is harder for me because I'm not a director, of course. But yeah, so I'm not sure I'm really a director, but just a composer who needs to control a lot of non-musical things as well in the composition.
So, Alison, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you, Sandris.
It was really nice interview, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.